Time for another big week of racing. It is the Tampa Bay Derby coming up this week. Barry, we are offering this awesome Road to the Derby package now over at DRF. It starts in a few weeks. Basically, the entire last round of Derby preps, you can get all together in one package. So if you purchase the Road to the Derby package, you get past performances for Louisiana Derby Day, Jeff Ruby Stakes Day, which are on March 22nd. Then the next week, March 29th, Florida Derby Day at Gulfstream, Arkansas Derby Day at Oaklawn. You also get the Clocker Report at Gulfstream. April 5th, Santa Anita Derby Day, Bluegrass Day at Keeneland, Wood Memorial Day. You get past performances for all of those days and the Santa Anita Clocker Report. You get Lexington Day the next week on April 12th. And then you get Oaks Day and Derby Day along with those Clocker Reports, all 10.
It's a pretty good deal, man.
You know you're going to get those, so you just purchase it now and you save a bunch of money. That's, might as well. You're going to be looking at those races. You're going to be handicapping those races. You and I are going to be handicapping the Tampa Bay Downs Pick 5 coming up this weekend. How's everything going on your end, my friend? We didn't talk last week. I was in New York. It always feels like 10 years when there's like 1 week when we don't talk.
I know. Yeah. Doing good. The weather's finally warming up around here. And should be great. I'm going out to Tampa Bay Downs on Saturday, so it should be a good weekend.
Okie dokie. Well, let's as I messing around. I don't know if you saw this on your end. Whenever there's any app that ever like changes, like I never want my phone to update because I'm so used to everything. And StreamYard sort of changed their like layout a bit. And now it's going to take me a few days because it's just like I'm still all over the place. But it's very simple. It's probably going to be even easier for me. But until you get that figured out, we're all like looking around. So, my friend, we're going to go to race number 7 at Tampa Bay Downs because there's a pick 5 that covers races 7 through 11. 4 of those races are stakes races on Saturday. The Tampa Bay Derby is race number 11. Kentucky Derby points are on the line there. But the 7th race is the Columbia. It's a really challenging race here, going a mile on the turf. Some of the major players in this one, Reagan's Wit, very impressive winner for Cherie DeVoe on January the 20th. Zulu Kingdom was a multiple graded stakes winner last year. His only loss came in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf when he was one of the betting choices in there. So he obviously could have a nice starting point to the year. You have the Christophe Clement trained Revolutionnaire, who is 4-1 on the morning line, and Dream On, who came out of the Breeders' Cup, won at Gulfstream, and now steps back up into stakes. Those are some of the major players in here, Barry. But who are the horses on your radar?
Yeah, I'd start with the 9-horse Dream On. I think this horse might get a really good trip and almost forced to based on the fact that this horse is drawn to the outside. I think IRAD will have to get a little bit aggressive, and the speed in here, the 2 and the 3, if they both stay in, aren't very fast, and they're kind of just rabbits for everybody else. I don't know how fast they're actually going to be on the front end, but they should set the table enough. And I think the 9 Dream On is probably going to be positioned to get first run, and that might be the winning move.
What makes this race pretty challenging is, obviously, I think you have a horse like Reagan's Wit who's super impressive. I get so concerned with the maiden winner, like a horse who has that big maiden win like that.
It's hard. It's hard to see where they stack up when they get into winners, and then let alone, in a stakes kind of situation. It's a really tough read to see how good they actually are.
Yeah, because the race was awesome, right? I'm not like got bumped, was 10 lengths off, got stopped on the inside, was still 9th at the top of the lane, angles out and absolutely inhales the field. Beat a couple next out winners. Just, I think he is one of the horses to beat, no doubt. The horses who I kind of like a little bit, Barry, some of the ones on my radar. I thought the 7 Versus, talking about the trips, I think this guy can sit like he did last time out and get the jump on maybe the horses like the 4, Reagan's Wit, and some of the deeper closers. What I like about Versus is the foundation of those 3-mile races recently. So there's some bottom, there's some fitness. The debut was solid with trouble, came back in the second start. I bet him that day. Because he's the type of horse who I like to play off a trouble trip in the debut. Second start back, He came back and he ran really well. He beat After Taxes, who came back to win. And then last time out, he just couldn't get by Forge Steel, who basically went gate to wire. So if he gets a little bit of pace to run at, I think he fits well in here. I could see him being a really nice price because he's not flashy, right? He doesn't have a bunch of stakes races that he's dropping out of like some of these other horses do, but he's a good, solid horse at this level in this spot. Some of these other horses are using this as a starting point and hopefully bigger and better later in the year. Not the case for Versus here.
Yeah, Versus is very interesting. I like the fact that this horse has non-maiden experience coming into this race. One horse that is really interesting to me too is the 8 Revolutionaire. In comparison, Zulu Kingdom broke his maiden in France at St. Cloud back in June of 2024. This horse was unveiled in March 2024 at St. Cloud as well in a 4.5 furlong race and didn't run a step at $2, 2-1. Then comes back in June and really hasn't done anything wrong since. I think that, obviously those Group 3 races over in France stack up favorably
The race
against
was impressive too.
non-grades. Yeah,
I watched that last race, the Prix de la Rochette. The horse was towards the back, about 5 lengths off, and made a really nice late move down the center of the track for third. It was a good effort.
Yeah, and I think that sets this horse up very well for this spot, especially on the stretch out.
First time,
the only
like
thing
this, he does well with this kind of move too, bringing these
does.
horses over first time off the long layoff.
Yeah, and this one kind of fits all those, checks all the boxes for that kind of run. I think that one, for me, I like just the 8 and the 9 here. Obviously, Zulu Kingdom can win. Hard to keep that one off of tickets, but this is a really tough race.
Yeah. 4 Logical, who we got into a little bit earlier. Let's see some of the other horses who I wanted to talk about. The 6 Zulu Kingdom we hit on. She's super logical. He is. I said she about a few of these. He don't have to really sell you too much on him. The 9 Dream On, the type of trip you were mapping out, looks like perfect for this horse sitting towards the outside, getting that same sort of trip from last time out. We went through Revolutionaire, who I think is a major player. Just a couple that are sort of fringe players. The one early adopter, fine. He just doesn't look like he was as good as Zulu Kingdom, who handled him last time out. But maybe he can have a couple months off, going to be a little more mature, start off the year here, blinkers coming on. The 3 I actually thought too had a legitimately trouble trip last time out. That was just against softer. Like, even if he had a better trip and won that race, that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to beat a group like this. So while I want to point out the trouble, I do want to mention this is a way, way tougher group. But Sky Masterson, I believe, is I think it's Guys and Dolls. I think that's one of the Guys and Dolls, the character there.
Yes.
Anything else you want to hit on in the Columbia, my friend?
No, but it's a nice little race to start off the sequence.
Yeah. Tricky start to the pick 5 here in race number 7. Let's turn the page to race number 8. So this is the one non-stakes race in the sequence. It's an optional 16 claimer first level allowance race. And Barry, just from a starting point, I wanted to mention this one horse because you and I talked about him last time he ran, the number 11 Silver Slugger. He was in the Pelican and he was coming out of his form that's like kind of head scratching. The horse obviously has ability, but he's had some physical issues because he's got some gaps in, big gaps in his resume. But he was in the Pelican in a race where on paper it looked like there were no speed horses at all. And then he missed the break.
Yeah, he got left and
had no chance.
Much curtains after that.
He kind of moved into contention a little bit, but then, he had no chance because that was kind of what would have been his advantage there, having speed over that group. This is a lot softer group than he was facing there.
Yeah, I don't know where he fits. I mean,
me neither.
Look at his races.
He's a tough read. He really is.
He's run everywhere in every kind of race, and it's like, what do you do with a horse like this? I really don't know. And usually when I get that indecisive, it's a toss. horse Laser Sharp looks kind of, set up to win this race. Uh, this race is kind of, you could say, is beneath this horse in a way. I know it's kind of has allowance conditions, and it's a 16K claiming tag on it, but it's an optional claimer. This horse probably is not in for the tag, and the race kind of sets up for this sort of run from a horse that kind of sits slightly off the pace, speed inside of him, and should run pretty well in this spot. The other horse, Osprey, has the same sort of inclination as intent to run this race. I want to go with Osprey instead, only because this horse really should have won um, opening day on November 20th. This horse should have beat Take Charge, the 6 horse Take Charge Smiling, and didn't. Was kind of all over the track. Didn't get a great ride that day, and just missed. And I think that form is coming back around. And this horse fits very well at this level. And I want to give Osprey a real good shot to win this race.
Couple that are on my radar. The 6 Take Charge Smiling, I think just fits pretty well. Was the horse who beat Osprey in that same race you were talking about, and has that kind of style where can sit close, can pass some horses a little bit. These last 2 races, they were 20 claimers. They were pretty tough. Like when you look at Impacto, who beat him last time out, Impacto's in very nice form right now. He's won 3 of his last 4. He won this optional 32 most recently, non-winners of 2. So I think that was a solid group. And the number 12, I think just pretty logical there with this one too. Laser Sharp, who I'm a little worried about the wide trip, but eliminate his grass race. Everything else is good.
Yeah.
It all makes a lot of sense. He's now going to go second start back off the break. So, yeah, he's super logical. The 11, I think we'll run a lot better in here too. The 6 was the other one for me. Unfortunately, I had the 8 and 4th. I couldn't get too creative in here, but maybe with Osprey in here. Shout out to the AEW wrestling fans, Will Osprey fans here on the 8.
I'll say this about this race, as straightforward as it might look. This has the feel of one of those races that I always talk about at Tampa Bay Downs, where it looks one way on paper and something just
Chaotic.
completely strange happens. This is that race, I think. But it's just such a tough race to figure out. A lot of them do look the same, and they pop up with good efforts every now and then. I wouldn't be surprised, like for example, if a horse like Crocodile Hunter bounced back and ran a good race. Stuff like that happens in races like this, where it's cheaper or more inexpensive horses like this in a sequence when you're full of stakes races. This might be the outlier where you could get some chaos.
Not an easy race in race number 8 at Tampa. Let's turn the page. A couple more stakes races at Tampa Bay Downs that we're going to get on into. Race number 9 is the Hillsborough. So Barry, kind of looking at some of the major players in the Hillsborough here. They'll go a mile and an eighth on the turf course. Sparkle Blue won this race last year. You and I got this horse at a massive price, just walked on the front end, and there was nobody there pushing him early. Venetia coming second, start off the bench. Give me another. This horse is an absolute monster. This horse coming in from South Africa has undefeated 7 for 7, first time in the Grand Motion barn. Saffron Moon was really impressive winning the Endeavor last time out. Yeah, those are some of the top players. What's on your radar here for this one?
I didn't really see too much speed in this race. I'm not really sure exactly what they're going to do with Gimme Another, but just the fact that Irad shows up there, I would say they're probably going to sit off the pace. They wouldn't want to get to the lead unless this horse is just super fast, gets the lead easily, and kind of runs off. And that's certainly possible in this race because I don't think there's a whole ton of speed in here. Sparkle Blue really doesn't want the lead. just so happened to be the fastest horse last year in this race, and nobody, I mean, nobody even tried the horse. Um, and the 3 horse, She's Fire, is really interesting.
I know. I looked at this horse a long way. I'm not sure how good she is, but she could really have a
Falls
big.
into a great trip.
I
I
know.
mean, and Kevin Rice does this sort of thing and drops these horses into these kind of races, and they run big. Even this horse, if you go back to that August 4th race, the Pucker Up, that wasn't a bad race despite what happened, how it played out, and where this horse finished. Um, Given the fact that there's not that much speed in here, if this horse could get in front of Sparkle Blue, who really isn't a speed horse, and then if you think about Give Me Another, this horse could dictate the pace and hang around a long way in a race like this.
So my play in this race is a different horse, but for the exact same reasoning that you had. I think the 9 is really interesting because of trip. Because this is a horse who sat the exact type of trip I would love on July the 7th when she won that race at Belmont and Aqueduct. And when you look at the horses that she faced in her 2 races in the US, she comes into the Valley View at Keeneland. This was an awesome field. Surge Capacities in that race, comes back to win the Grade 1 Matriarch next time out. Heavenly Sundays in that race, comes back to win the Miss Revere taken off the grass next time out. You also had a couple more, Flashy Gem and Abaduncia. Both came back to win their next start. Sacred Wish was in there, won the Matriarch since then. I mean, we're talking about some really, really nice horses who were in that race. And Eternal Silence had no shot, had a really tough trip. Comes back after being off from October of 2023 to July of 24. So a layoff very similar to this one.
Yeah.
And wins, gets a nice trip, beats a horse named Mrs. Astor, who has since come back and won a couple graded stakes races out in Southern California, won the Red Carpet, won the Bobby Frankel. There's not much speed in here. This horse is going to be a little bit fresh coming off the bench. And in a race where most of these horses haven't shown any races with tactical speed, at least I know she can do that. At least I know she can sit 4th or 5th, kind of loom up and be tactical. I think she's a little better than her speed figures would suggest. You look back at her form in Ireland, this is a Group 1 placed horse. She faced legitimate company, and I think she could get a nice trip in here. Eternal Silence is the big price play for me for some of the same thing that you're looking at, Barry. Can she get the jump on a lot of others in here?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible. That's why the tactics used will be very interesting to see who does what. Another horse on my radar was Venencia. I
She
think
should
that's how
be
you
so
say it.
much better second
Yeah,
start back, right?
exactly. I think that's the thing. You know how I love playing horses that do this. They come off the layoff similar buyer figure than what they went off the layoff or on the layoff with, and then they usually kind of break through at some point. Chad Brown has a long list of horses that have done this and done it at Tampa Bay Downs, no less. So it wouldn't surprise me if A, you see this horse a little bit closer to the pace, and B, have that late kick stronger than it was last year.
And that's the thing. Like when you're watching the race, she wasn't quite as good as Saffron Moon in that most recent start, but that was the first start back for Venetia, where you feel like you could just see it. She needed it a little bit more. Like Saffron Moon has been the type of horse who can just kind of fire some big races when ready. Like we've seen her fire big races off the bench, fire big races off of layoffs. I don't know if that's as much the case with Venetia, who I think just seems like a horse who kind of will round back into form with races under her.
Yeah, well, not only that, but there's versions of this race where the pace gets hot because of the fact they're seeing what we're seeing. And, there's a couple of horses that might go. If that's the case, Venetia will be upgraded because this
Yeah.
horse has a strong late kick and just needs a setup. And that's the only way that this horse could win. But it's certainly possible depending on what tactics the jockeys use.
So Saffron Moon was extremely impressive. And look at Pratt, how good they've been when Pratt comes to ride for Chad Brown at Tampa, just winning everything. If you get a chance to watch some of Gimme Another's races on YouTube, there's actually like a a feature about this mare where they go in that. It's like a 5-minute little feature. It tells a story about her and some of her, races. But what's cool is it has like a little compilation of like the stretch run of 5 of her races in a row. So you can see a lot of her in this one video that you watch. And with most of her, like any good horse, most of the races she's kind of sitting close. But there was one of them where she was way out of
back.
it.
Yeah.
And she had to close from way behind. And those are the ones that kind of give you the goosebumps. You're like, wow, this horse got completely taken out of her game, and she was still able to overcome and get the job done. So I have no doubt in her being a really, really talented horse. It's a lot to ask coming in here off an 11-month layoff, coming into a different style of racing. And she's going to get bet too, right? She's going to be a short price.
Absolutely.
Let's look at the grade 2 Hillsboro 1 1/8 on the Tampa undercard on Saturday. Let's move to the Florida Oaks, race number 10. Barry, in this race, I think some of the horses that will get a lot of support. You have the number 6, Lush Lips, who's coming off of 2 really impressive victories, pretty much on the front end. They're both visually awesome. Opulent Restraint was a nice stakes winner for Chad Brown in 2024. She'll make her first start of 2025. You have Nitrogen, who won the Ginger Brew and was third in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf. She fits really well. Pretty Lavish. That debut was good. Those are some of the horses, but you can make a case for even some of the bigger price horses who are lightly raced. Or maybe for you, do you think 1 or 2 of these horses stand out? How do you see it?
Yeah, this is another really, really tough race because everybody kind of looks the same on paper. They kind of run the same a lot, and it's going to be all about positioning. I know a horse like Nitrogen might have a little bit of an edge just based on the fact that she's run a really good race already this year and will most likely improve off of that just naturally being from 2 to 3. She should improve a little bit more. So you kind of have to give her a little bit of an edge. But the 2 outside of her are really interesting to me. The 10, Pretty Lavish, and the 11, Celtic Motif. These horses have every right to jump up another notch too. And if that's the case, they're right there with Nitrogen. But it's just, where they're going to be placed, how they're really probably going to react a lot off of what Nitrogen does.
Yeah. With the trip here, Dettori's aboard. See, for me, I have a hard time with horses like this, Barry, because as a Laker fan, I always see Celtic Motif. You know what I mean? So I'm like, oh no, Celtics, get out of here with this. But that was a pretty good performance. And another one who had good form in Ireland at the Curragh before coming over to the U.S. And you always love playing horses.
Unlucky,
second start
really
back. Like, it doesn't bother me that she's a maiden. Ran into a horse who was loose on the front end last time out and almost ran that horse down. But I will say, I think going through this race at like my second glance, I have to throw the 6 in because there might be versions of this race where she's just faster. It's pretty much her in the 12. It kind of looks like for that like early positioning.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if she's just like more down to the inside, maybe you've got Joelle aboard who decides to take back versus Saez, who was aboard last time out, who's a little bit more aggressive. Like when there's only one other speed horse in there, a lot of times it's kind of, and you're down towards the inside. I could very much see Lush Lips running away from this group in different versions of this race. So
you also got the one horse that might want to get involved a little bit early to set the table for the others.
That is the one, Barry, who I am absolutely using her because she is better than her speed figures are.
Absolutely.
She's a
good
really
company too.
Honest, exactly, right? Because we know the horses that she's been facing. So even though she doesn't have buyers into the 80s, they're a little bit faster than those. And she's not that far behind. She's going to save ground. She could sit right behind the leaders if someone wants to go, just save all the ground. And while you have some of these deeper horses bumping around, getting caught in traffic, she's just going to be right there saving ground on the rail and have every opportunity. I think she's going to get a great trip at a really fair price. Smart Union, definitely going to be in the pick 5 mix for me. Yeah, I mean, watch the replay of the 2. Brilliant. It's very good. It was awesome. This horse was um just traveling really, really well. Was
You
first
know,
off was
I was gonna
good.
say that this horse is the one, at least on the morning line, that was kind of a surprise to me. I figured this horse would get
Absolutely.
a lower moniker because of the ease at which this horse won. And you'll see in the beginning, you can see it says off slow. I think something happened with the starter because you can see the
Yep.
starter like get frustrated with himself after the horse kind of hesitated and then went.
And
But
then the
that
horse
horse was
not
so
long
much
after
the
that,
best.
this
It
horse and after that start, that's a really good point because it didn't seem as much like it was her own fault
right.
because
Yeah.
she moved up and responded exactly how they wanted in the race, like a
Oh yeah.
very push button filly. So to me, I'm glad you pointed that out. And as soon as they asked her,
Oh,
she
she was
just
push button. She just
moved
motored. And
easily in
yeah,
between
Camacho
horses.
waved the stick at her at the top of the stretch. He hit her once just to keep her straight.
Yep.
And once she did that, she leveled off. And I think that was the plan. The
Yeah.
way it looked like is like they told him to ride her out. And that kind of piqued my interest in this horse quite a bit.
Yeah. She was visually impressed. That's why this race is really fun because you can say that for a lot of these horses. I mean, look at the race that Deloraine won on December 13th.
Very good race.
Her last turf race was an 8-length victory when she was behind horses buried and she got room and then exploded. It was very, very impressive visually. The
And
9
honestly
Nitrogen.
didn't really embarrass herself behind Lacara, who was
No, who
huge.
kind of freaked that day and then regressed a little bit in her next start. So that wasn't a bad performance. The 9 Nitrogen, who we talked about, multiple grade 1 placed. The 10 was extremely impressive. I mean, you could go through, make a lot of cases for many. Some of the horses definitely on my ticket. 1 and 6 for sure. Probably 9, I think, is kind of like the horse to beat. And then we were getting into the 2 a little bit. Brilliante. Barry, you were hitting on
The 1, 2, and 11.
yeah,
And then the obvious
with Nitrogen.
the
Yeah.
9. Yeah, it's hard to keep that horse off
Alf.
because the versatility. She can be wherever. Jose Ortiz is riding lights out on the grass lately, so it's going to be hard to keep that one out of the mix.
Barry, we're going to be 4 for 4, turning the page to
You
the
know it.
Tampa Bay Derby race number 11. I thought it was a good Tampa Bay Derby this year because to me, you can make cases for a few different horses. You can make cases against a lot of these horses too, right? You have Chancellor McPatrick, who's coming off of a layoff. He hasn't raced since the Breeders' Cup, and he's a deeper closer. So from a running style standpoint, he's a little bit up
Up
against.
against it.
Same thing with Hill Road, who was third in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Both of them are putting the blinkers on because they just need to get involved a little bit more early on. The 5 is also doing the same thing. All 3 of these horses have ability. They're just late runners who put the blinkers on because they need to get a little bit closer. Then you have speed horses like the 1, Owen Almighty, who's down on the inside, going to try to hold that position. You've got the 4, Brodeur, who showed speed in his last 2 starts. Both of them were wins. Both of them were on wet tracks, though, worth pointing out. And then Naughty Rascal, who wants to be forward. I don't know how far he wants to go. The real wild card to me is Patch Adams because the way I mapped it out for you, Barry, like there, could he sit like 4th
Yes, sir.
and just get the most
Absolutely.
perfect trip in here?
I
Get the
love this
jump?
horse.
I do too. I absolutely think this is the spot for him against the right type of group. He's got those 3 deeper closers that he should be in front of, and maybe those other 2 or 3 horses that he could sit right behind.
Yeah, his last race, you could tell he just needed it.
Yeah.
The horse made a huge middle move, flattened out, deep stretch, got nailed late, very late to get
It was his
4th.
first
I
start
mean,
going long, too.
right, and he certainly needed it, and he was put in the right position. He looked a little short to me.
Yep.
Once they figured out, the horse could handle the trip, the off the pace style, which he did perfectly fine in the Southwest. He just didn't have enough at the end. he got so much out of that race. I think it just puts him perfectly positioned to run a big race. He's got the setup to boot. I think he's going to be real hard to hold off.
I do too. I really agree. Like I kept going back in the afterwards. It just and maybe we're wrong, but
We could be. It
but as
wouldn't be the
far as like
first
a
time.
gambling standpoint, I'm gonna single him on pretty much everything.
Yeah,
I think because it
the
just like
the only other horse I think could get that kind of trip is Owen Almighty.
yeah, if he sits
And
off a little bit.
right, and I think he can do it. And I think Irad's going to put him in the spot to do it. Whether he kicks on or not is another story. But I think he's a little undervalued in
I
this
agree with
race
that because
as a
I think
whole. He's
I
better
he's
than what he looks like.
yes, and he's not because we have the conversation where we're like he's not a Derby horse, but they've already said he's not going to go to the Derby. They're going to
No,
use this race and then they're going to cut back and go to the Pat Day Mile. So they're going to why they want to keep him here because they can run for big money at a
Yeah.
track where he's run really well and try to get a graded stakes win right here. I mean, he's only 5-1 and a major player in this race, whether or not he's a Kentucky Derby horse. So I agree with you in that. If I end up playing multiple tickets and having others where I'm not singled, he would be the horse that I'm using because he'll go third start of the bench, off the bench. Does he have one little step forward where he
I
can
think he
get,
does.
you
If he
know,
gets a
like
better trip,
into the
I think,
90
yeah,
buyer, right? Like
I,
just around there. I think
he
he
has
could
it in him.
be right there. I just feel like both Chancellor McPatrick and Hill Road are going to be a little bit short and they're not going to get the sort of trip that they need.
Same thing with Filoso. He's
Right?
another one, deep closer
Exactly.
that's going to be up against it. I mean, honestly, it looks like this race is really Patch Adams to lose.
It is. And I will say, as a guy who loved me some Robin Williams, I know the movie doesn't get it gets crapped on, but it's one of those movies that I watched when I was young, so I hold it higher than most people,
I
right?
feel
Like
you. I feel
I
you on
don't
that. It's like
when you
me with
watch
Weird Science. It's the
exactly
same
when
thing.
you watch those movies when you're young, they're nostalgic. So while I can understand, I wouldn't put it on a list of the greatest movies of all time. But when I see it show up on like Rotten Tomatoes, it's like horrible, like 20% and stuff. I'm always like, no, come on, Patch Adams is a little better than that. Come on. So hopefully for you and I, Patch Adams is very good on Saturday at Tampa Bay Downs because last year, Barry, as we get ready to say goodbye, you and I played a pick 5 ticket together. We had a horse in one of the early races that was like 15 or 20-1 that won. So we were alive after the third race in the sequence, and it was going to pay huge. And then they had a power outage and a tote malfunction, and they had to pay the rest of everything to alls. In the last 2 legs, they ran the Tampa Bay Derby for purse only and for points only and no betting. And I've had a bad sour taste in my mouth about Tampa ever since then, man. It's ever since then. They owe you and me one. They do.
Yeah, they do. I actually scored that day because of the alls. I had to go back the next weekend to cash
because they could. Yeah, that was funny.
Yeah, I mean, but this pick 5 sequence is definitely worth attacking. I mean, it's going to pay stacks. There's going to be probably 3, if not 4 big long shots in this sequence.
Challenging sequence Saturday, Tampa Bay Downs. It's the pick 5 races 7 through 11 that leads you right into the Tampa Bay Derby. Don't forget, just a few weeks starts the Road to the Derby package. You can pay for it right now. And then as soon as the past performances for the first prep are ready for that day, you'll get them. You can also get advanced Kentucky Derby PPs. So if you want to just start looking at the field, what their DRF PPs look like, this is what you want. You'll get the Clocker reports and betting strategies for the Oaks and the Derby day. Barry, my friend, I see you picking many winners over there on the notorious OTB with the Wolf of Oaklawn. Give us a plug on that right now.
Yeah, we have fun with it over there. We do a lot of little shows where we're doing pick 3s at Mahoning Valley. We get parks, we got Turfway, we do a little Tampa Gulfstream, Aqueduct. This week we did Tampa Bay Downs $100 budget game. So yeah, we have a fun time over there. We like to hunt down winners.
Barry Spears, my friend, you're heading out there this weekend, right? Tampa?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I'll be there
Awesome.
Saturday.
So anyone that's around, make sure to come and check in, say hello to Barry. We appreciate you hanging out with us here on the YouTube channel. If you can, subscribe below, leave us a comment. Let us know who you like, how you're going to be playing Tampa Bay Derby Day on Saturday. We always appreciate the interactions, and man, I'm excited because next week I'm actually going to be in Vegas for the NHC.
There you go.
Doing a lot of coverage over there, getting interviews with different people, and then we will have Louisiana Derby and Turfway that week. Following week, Gulfstream, Florida Derby, and Oaklawn. Boom. Then the next week, it's Santa Anita, Aqueduct for the Wood, and Keeneland opens up.
Man, it's picking up.
So we'll have one of those tracks you and I will be focusing in on all the next few months. And then when Keeneland starts, those couple of weeks, it'll probably be Keeneland a few weeks right into the Oaks and Derby. Like, boom, that's our next 2 months right there, all set up of big races. So looking forward to it, buddy. Love picking your brain, and we're going to be trying to lead the folks to many winners over the next couple months.
Absolutely. That's what we do.
For Barry Spears, I'm Gino Bacola. We wish all of you the best of luck. Let's listen to the soothing sounds of Joey Cleveland. Take it away, my friend.